They called him the Butcher of Uganda, a man whose reign was soaked in blood and terror. Idi Amin Dada rose from a simple soldier to one of the most feared dictators of the 20th century. His cruelty knew no bounds, but among the many horrors of his regime, one rumor still haunts the history books, that he fed his enemies to crocodiles. Idi Amin came to power in 1971 through a military coup, overthrowing the then-president Milton Obote. At first, many Ugandans cheered. They believed Amin was a hero, a man of the people. But it didn't take long for the cheering to turn into screaming. Almost overnight, he transformed Uganda into a kingdom of fear. Within weeks, his regime began targeting intellectuals, ethnic groups, and anyone suspected of disloyalty. Thousands were rounded up, tortured, and executed without trial. His secret police, the State Research Bureau, became infamous for its brutality. But the most terrifying stories didn't come from torture chambers. They came from the waters of Lake Victoria. Survivors and defectors began telling the same chilling tale, that Idi Amin would take prisoners to the banks of the Nile River or Lake Victoria, tie them up and feed them alive to crocodiles. It wasn't just a method of execution. It was a spectacle of terror, designed to send a message. If you crossed Amin, you wouldn't just die, you would be devoured. Amin's palace in Jinja sat near the Nile, and his private residence overlooked the crocodile-infested waters. Some say he would sip tea and watch as victims were torn apart, sometimes with guests present. Other times, he would bring foreign dignitaries to show off his power, as if the lives of his people were mere entertainment. The dictator often denied these stories publicly, but in interviews he also smiled when asked about them. Crocodiles must eat too, he once reportedly said, with a chilling laugh. For those who knew Amin, this wasn't just cruelty, it was theater, a performance of power to keep his enemies paralyzed by fear. Beyond the crocodile executions, his reign was a parade of madness. He declared himself president for life, gave himself countless medals, and even awarded himself the title Conqueror of the British Empire. He claimed to receive messages from God through dreams and insisted that he was guided by divine will. Amin expelled over 70,000 Asians from Uganda in 1972, accusing them of economic sabotage. Their businesses were handed over to his allies, and the economy collapsed. Meanwhile, his paranoia spiraled. He believed Israel, the CIA, and neighboring countries were plotting against him. Anyone he suspected of betrayal was killed, sometimes with his own hands. The dictator's palace was rumored to house a private morgue and a torture chamber beneath it. His henchmen operated with absolute impunity. Soldiers patrolled the streets, abducting anyone without warning. Families would wake up to find loved ones missing and never hear from them again. By the late 1970s, Uganda was in chaos. The international community began to take notice, and Amin's bizarre behavior only escalated. He sent love letters to Queen Elizabeth, offered himself as the King of Scotland, and made outrageous speeches that bordered on delusion. But behind the buffoonery was a man responsible for the deaths of over 300,000 people. In 1978, he made a fatal mistake by invading Tanzania. The Tanzanian army, along with Ugandan exiles, launched a counterattack. Kampala, the capital, fell quickly. Amin fled the country in disgrace, eventually finding asylum in Saudi Arabia, where he lived comfortably until his death in 2003. He was never tried, never punished, never forced to answer for the countless atrocities, the rivers of blood, or the crocodiles that were fed with human flesh. He died old, in peace, surrounded by his family. A cruel irony for a man who caused so much pain. But in Uganda, his shadow still looms. The older generation whispers his name, too afraid to speak it aloud. The crocodiles still swim in the waters near his former home, and some locals believe the spirits of the devoured still haunt the riverbanks. History remembers Idi Amin as a clownish monster, a brutal tyrant whose cruelty was matched only by his madness. But beneath the jokes and wild headlines lies the truth of his reign. A nation ruled by fear, stained with blood, and scarred by the echo of screams beneath crocodile-infested waters.